I'm here with Andy Delso. Were there any instances, either early on in your career or recently, where you had or where you encountered like some sort of challenge or something that you had to overcome?
My challenge, the one that I can remember far ago, was probably just the dev versus QA mentality, and kind of overcoming that. It all worked out in the end. Me and one very specific developer at my previous employer just didn't get along at first until he finally kind of saw value. Was a younger guy, fresh out of college kind of thing, so it was definitely challenging to work with until we finally saw eye to eye.
What were like the steps that you took to get over that issues?
Just kind of continually reiterate my value to the team and what I provide, and how quality works and whatnot, and just stating that different ways each time, until it finally kind of sunk in.
So would you say that kind of behavior is relatively common from your experience, or is that like a one-off instance?
I think that was more of so I'm going on, I think I'm in my 8th year doing quality assurance work. And I think 8 years ago it was very different. Plus I was newer to the career, and so I might, my opinions have changed a little bit, or my ways of talking about it have changed since then. Here at Sprout, I think the culture is very different. Trustwave, where I was at before, was very corporate, very, enterprise level style of running the business.
Right.
But here I think people are a lot more open to different ideas. And I think since then the thought on quality has changed enough that it's actually kind of taught in school to developers. So they the nice thing is that they come in knowing, or at least having some semblance of what testing is and what it does.
Right.
So that makes it easier.
Yeah, that definitely would provide a lot more ease of access to get into other roles where they do have, QA, to be prepared for that type of thing.
Yeah.
What do you think was the point at which that there was that click of you've finally said the one thing that was now I get it for that kind of relationship?
Honestly, from that particular situation, I don't actually remember. It was so long. It feels so long ago now.
Right. If you were to
7 years ago,
kind of take yourself back through kind of a simulated experience, what do you think you would, and maybe what would you say now compared to then of how to get that idea across?
The team aspect of things really helps, right? We're all part of a team here, and I'm providing an essential skill that somebody else may not have altogether, or only has limited exposure to. And thinking about it, we augment the developer's ability to get the job done, right?
Yeah.
They could get it done and it would be okay. But we're there to try and make their work look better, almost like a copy editor for a newspaper or something like that, right? Like if they didn't have editors at newspapers and you read the article, you'd probably be like, okay, I get the idea, but the way this is written is horrible or something like that, right? So, there's that, and everybody provides an essential piece. Like even I feel like the designers are kind of similar, right? Like they continue to make the idea better.
Right.
We provide that quality/risk skill that people might not be thinking about all the time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that kind of goes
just
into
how to prevent the value we provide,
right,
to that person.
Yeah, and I mean that is why the different types of roles exist, so that there is a focus on handling those types of things.
Yeah. And I think for that particular person, there was the negative connotation of finding bugs. You're insulting my work kind of feeling, instead of, oh, if I fix this, I've now made it that much better.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of developers here don't have that. They look at it as not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It sucks there's more work to do, but if we do our job and work together as a team to push that forward in the process better, what if they found the bug sooner?
Yeah.
Right? That it's not a bug, right? Necessarily.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of that I experienced in games, where it was like we were definitely advised to be careful with the way that we worded defects that we found, because it was essentially explained to us that we didn't want to hurt their feelings about their baby. So like, yeah, I definitely get that.
Which is funny because now, you mentioned that we in Bedford have been working on a game, right? So when like you bring something up negative about it, or he does, I don't get that way, right? It's just like, it's kind of, it's messed up. Let's fix it. Why did it break? How did it break? And it's interesting to take our mentality of testing and apply it to being more of a software engineer.
Yeah.
Combining the roles more directly.
Yeah, it's definitely a learned thing to like work on something and look at it. I guess that would be like objectively, instead of look at it like I made this thing and this person's telling me that there's all these things wrong with it, which then I guess could kind of like reflect on them being like, oh well, then like they're saying all this stuff about something I made, so like that might feel like it reflects on them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's strange to have like started out there and then be in this type of environment where that kind of stuff is non-existent or nearly non-existent.
I think it speaks highly of the quality culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, we found a bug. Yeah, it sucks, but the customer didn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I feel like the customer finding it reflects more poorly on us than me finding it and them getting pissed about it. Right.
Yeah.
Which is great, because I haven't noticed that happen very often here at all, or if at all.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely been a much better experience than where I was when I started. Do you have any sort of like kind of creative avenue that you have, or some sort of activity you either do in work or outside of work that kind of like refreshes your mind or like gets you back into a positive state?
Well, I like to play games, but I don't feel that actually scratches the like if you think of it as like a stress relief kind of thing sometimes.
Yeah.
I do like drawing and like coloring with my kids and stuff like that. That definitely helps. been trying to play guitar more often and whatnot. Usually when I play games, though, I tend to play them more socially. I don't play by myself as much, so that I'm talking, with someone. And
right.
It's not about work, usually. So, the great thing about working here, too, is that I don't get, like, stressed out. It's usually personal life things that stress me out.
Yeah.
Even working across multiple squads and stuff like that, yeah, it's stressful. Most of it is good stress, motivation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say drawing and playing guitar are probably the two go-to things. And along with drawing, the pixel art type stuff. So
yeah,
sleeping.
It's
always good. Or reading.
That's true.
I try to read too. So.
Mm. Do you think any one of those kind of creative avenues plays a larger impact on you, or do you feel like each of them kind of satisfy a different aspect?
I've always branded myself as a jack of all trades, master of none,
mm-hmm.
which sucks because then you never become good at one of them, right? Like I played guitar in a band and I just plateaued at one point skill-wise and never got better because I didn't make the time to practice or try new things, But out of all those, I feel like the one that is the most effective is the drawing one. Probably because you're just sitting there really focused on one point.
Mm-hmm.
In a meditative kind of state to some extent, that flow state that we talk about. I haven't played guitar enough to say that if I were to pick it up and start playing that I would get as much out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just rusty.
Yeah.
Listening to music is good too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
now, would you like to kind of go over I guess, relatively high level of like your
career progress?
Yeah, your work experience going from where you started to like where you're at now.
I've always kind of been in tech in some way. So my first job out of college was working for like a computer resale company in Oswego. Most of the time I worked in like the shipping area, but other times I would get called on to help with some of the more technical things.
Mm-hmm.
And in college, my background was I had a minor in computer science, and I had actually started as a major in that and switched to economics at one point. I worked with a friend that I had lived with in college at one point at this first job. He went to TrustWave, and then he got me a job at TrustWave, where I started off in support for their TrustKeeper product. Eventually made it to a team lead, so I was, mentoring and quasi-managing people, but also becoming a subject matter expert in the piece of software, so that when one of the directors of engineering I was good friends with, he had suggested chatting with our QA manager because they were looking for people.
Right.
I really wanted to get out of support. It wasn't a fun job there, whereas here at Sprout, all you hear is that our support people are loved by everybody because people want to use our software, right?
Yeah.
People for PCI compliance don't want to do that stuff. I had to take a manager, in quotes, call for somebody who had a lawyer on the other hand, and was just like, I think you should do this for me, and I threw everything at him that I could in the nicest way possible. And then you get off the phone and you're just like, you just have that stressed out feeling that you got your head chewed off for no reason, So yeah, I interviewed, and that was an interesting one because whereas here, like, you get interviewed by like a pair of people, I got interviewed by the whole QA team at once on a call, right? I had to write a test plan for a coffee machine, which is where I got that for our interview questions. The funny thing is that they gave the same requirements to devs and told them to program it. So I tried that at one point, right? But I wrote it in a very functional style instead of object-oriented style.
Okay.
And I mentioned it to the software architect that was there, and he's like, yeah, I would have laughed if I looked at that. I was like, damn, so mean. So I wasn't really looking for a job, but TrustWave had kind of nickeled and dimed me a lot. Like I started very low wage and they just barely gave me anything as I moved.
Right.
So I wasn't super happy with it, but I wasn't looking, and I had been getting messages on LinkedIn like constantly. So I was like, all right, let's just see what people think, right? And I took a couple interviews, and then finally I got one with Molly, and they just sold the company to me, and I've fell in love with working here. So been here over 5 years now, and started as a QA, not an associate, just QA, number 4 on the team, behind Kyle and Anna and Joe. Anna and Joe, who are no longer here. And then I'm a senior now, and I enjoy it very much. Still learning.
Yeah, there's always opportunities to learn. And it's kind of nice to have a place where you do have that ability to be somewhere for an extended period of time and still be able to look at it and have those opportunities to learn.
When I was at TrustWave, I was on support for like 2.5-ish years, and then with QA for 2.5-ish years. And I was on one of like 2 or 3 testers on that app that I mentioned. And then American Express has their own version of PCI compliance and contracted us to make like a version of TrustKeeper for their program, and I was the only tester on that.
Okay.
And that was kind of it's interesting because I'm not like, that one was literally, they would basically upload like numbers and reports into it, and then it was literally just a big data warehouse that American Express could pull out data on. So that was the interesting thing, was we were making it not for our customers, but also them. So they had their own testers looking at it, and that was interesting because we had a UAT environment so that they could do that. And then the interesting thing is that it's similar to our analytics thing, but I still don't think I'm very good at data. It's kind of a hard thing to like think how to create the data and whatnot. But then then I came here, and now I'm on analytics after being on publishing and engagement and helping with mobile sometimes. I've been everywhere, man. Sprout Edition. So
cool.
Not a super long journey. I mean, I've been out of college since 2007.
Yeah.
12 years, so.
Yeah, that's not that long. Although I guess I'm not much different, so.
Well, when you have kids and you own a house, right, then you just feel like you're 45.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for having a chat.
No problem.
Hope to do another one soon. Longer, hopefully.
Yeah, I would love to do that.